journalist reporting for Croker News from the National Rural Health Conference in Cairns. We're sitting here with Professor Allan Fels, who's just delivered a keynote in the plenary about the disparities in mental health for rural, regional and remote Australia. Professor Fels, one of the issues that you highlighted was the maldistribution of the mental health workforce in Australia. Can you please explain what that means, what it is and what it means?
Yeah, it means that the number of psychologists and psychiatrists and mental health nurses in cities is much greater than in regional and rural Australia, proportionate to the respective populations. So where I live, if I walk out the front door in my city with a headache, I can get 5 psychiatrists and 50 psychologists and 100 nurses to assist me. If I live in a poorer area of a big city, there's much more scarcity, and I know that many GPs, if someone approaches them with quite a serious mental health problem, will not recommend looking for a psychiatrist or psychologist because there aren't any within reach. Now, in rural and remote Australia, there's a real lack of services, and that is due to the maldistribution of the workforce. Basically, what happens is that a doctor, for example, say a psychiatrist, gets a provider number from the government, and then they can practice and live wherever they want to. So they naturally tend to want to live in better areas, better economic areas. So the workforce is heavily concentrated in better off areas, and that's where all the services are. The services are much less available in worse off areas.
And isn't that the opposite of what we need in a way, given that you would expect the level of demand and the level of need would be higher in poorer areas?
That's quite right. The level of demand and need is much higher in poorer areas, and the data shows that, and the data also shows much worse health outcomes, including for mental health, for suicide and so on, in rural and remote Australia, and especially remote Australia. So you're right, the needs are much higher there, but the workforce is not there.
What would you like to see change this maldistribution? What do you think are some of the realistic solutions?
Well, the realistic solutions have to take account of the Constitution, which says you can't conscript people, and that's generally been interpreted as meaning you can't require providers of medical services to live in rural Australia. We should keep looking at different ways of getting them out there that fall short of conscription. We should also, of course, offer greater economic incentives and higher pay and so on, but they've not had a very good track record, and one of the reasons is that a lot of doctors who live in more remote parts of Australia fear that their children won't get the educational benefits they can if they live in inner cities with access to private schools and so on. So paying more is a fairly limited solution. Now, I don't want to abandon all hope on this matter, but I do want to mention that there is much scope for making greater use of e-health in the field of mental health. That is that video conferencing is something that should be encouraged. I don't think we're going to solve the shortage of workforce in rural and regional Australia very quickly, if at all. So we need to be realistic. And e-health has much to recommend it. It is a way of getting good counselling and advice and treatment. Personally, I like to see practitioners of it visit the remote areas from time to time and actually get to know customers, but they don't have to be on the spot the entire time. So there are quite strong signs and evidence that e-health does work reasonably well in giving people better access where they wouldn't have any. Also, some people prefer to use computer-based assistance to get them started. Some people don't like coming forward with a mental health problem and admitting it. They prefer to get access on the internet to some form of e-health that gives you a bit of guidance on whether you've got a problem, whether it might need some professional treatment, what are the steps that you can take, and so on.
What are the barriers to wider use of e-health?
It's just that a starting point now, that's the real thing. That is, we've not had a long history of it. People are spotting its potential. There is resistance and lack of knowledge on the side of users and potential users. They themselves may not have access to the internet, and often if you have a really severe mental illness, you're just not into that world at all. You're not capable of doing it, or you don't want to do it. So those attitudes by users is quite a problem. On the supply side, we're still at an early stage. Governments could do a lot more to make these services available and to make their availability better known.
So more promotion by government of e-health?
Certainly more promotion of e-health.
Well, I might say thank you very much there, because I know you have to get a plane. But thanks for making time to chat to us on Periscope today. Bye now.
Thanks very much.